Achilles and the Queen by Kyle Derek McDonald. Young Pallades, whose hands yet reeked with death, having purloined Troy's finest son of breath, beheld Patroclus' husk in flames consumed, his dearest comrade in fate's hands entombed. No lover, nor the river Peneus, would greet the valiant son of Peleus in Phthia, where his noble father stayed, for to home's shores he would not be conveyed, his doom to fall upon the Trojan field, by will divine, and by the fates being sealed. His spleen, at equal blows with his remorse, rested within him to assert its force, and drive him towards the plains more war to wage, to shatter limbs, to open veins in rage. And though this wrath on Hector had been wroken, the Dardan soldiery had not been broken. Priam the king surveys still from his height. Aeneas keeps the Trojan men from flight. Proud Paris prances still in amorous pomp, and Helen shows no wish to eschew her rob. Not till the very embers cooled and crumbled did great Achilles stir, his visage humbled by grief, a cloud made ponderous with rain, which sought to shed its load in solemn bane. The ashes in an urn does he now put, expecting soon to add his own soft soot, when Thanatos inexorably demands to have the warrior's shade placed in his hands. Unto his mistress now retires the prince, hoping she gentle comfort can evince. Meanwhile, within the halls of maudlin Troy, dirges and elegies were in employ to assuage the sorrow of a weary land, having been cruelly robbed of her right hand. Yet in this doleful hour a blessing came, for Queen Penthesilea of the fame of the wild Amazones with her train arrived at Troy to prove a Danaan bane. The queen herself, austere, intrepid, proud, by Ares' fiercer graces was endowed, for he unto that formidable queen was sire. She was conceived amidst a flash of fire. This vehemence within her breast abode, and shone forth as in the hall she strode, dight in her glossy bronzed plates of toil, anticipating now the martial moil, where she would mount her chariot of war, and stain her spearhead with Hellenic gore. King Priam crossed his hall and met with glee the towering monarch in her pedigree. She saw that teen had roiled his kingly eye, whilst hardship had his stature turned awry. In an enfeebled voice he gave his thanks. "O regal queen, thou in thy mighty ranks cause this old sovereign's heart now to exult. For 9 relentless years this dire assault resounded has upon our hallowed wall. The gods at last would all this wreak forestall, for they have sent ye unto us this day." Now she, in plummy tones, replied this way: "Revered Priam, 'tis our honor so to march thus in an amiable show before the denizens of lofty Troy, the orgulous Achaeans to annoy. Upon mine honor I intend to free thy sacred city of thine enemy." Now tears within his eyes began to well, which he with aged hands conspired to quell. Here Hecuba stepped forth, her visage dure. "Dread queen, if thou canst offer us for cure, name what thou wilt possess, it shall be thine. Glory, much more than gold, is what is fine, for honor can ascend the mount of time. While gold doth plummet, dignity will climb. My Amazons and I will crush your foes, and heap upon their shoulders bloody woes. Not one Achaean shall survive our press, not one Hellene shall escape duress. We'll burn their fleet and push them from the strand. That's how we will disperse that plundering band." Her voice like a reboned horn intoned, as she her victory o'er the foe deponed. Andromache, made mild by Hector's fall, responded to the monarch's warlike call. "Penthesilea, we doubt not thy might, yet wary be of Argives in the fight, for they have champions of high repute, who have plunged Troy in bitterest dispute. Walk proudly sure, yet do not vainly vaunt. The queen laughed heartily and aimed to daunt the spirits of the widow, then spoke thus: "Sweet lady, prithee have no fear for us. Reared in the arts belligerent are we, not soft, effeminate practices like ye." This peroration stifled the exchange. Then Priam: "Come, a supper I'll arrange, a feast of splendor in thy honor held. This night our misery shall be dispelled. With promises of victory crowned, the Amazons will see our rivals downed." From thence the noble company retires, to merry drinking by the festal fires. Selene o'er the welkin then held sway. Apollo's sheen to dusky shade gave way. The Pythian prince lay waking in his bed, whilst the Amazon in Troy was flattered, convinced of her inevitable win. Such pride the immortal gods accounted sin, especially those gods who scorned with zeal the propagation of the city's weal. Pallas and Hera and Lord Zeus himself, who cared but little for proud Ilium's pelf. Anon the tocsin sounds the call to arms, for Eos o'er the cope now spreads her charms. The soldiers from their silent slumber leap, thinking of glory as they shake off sleep. Bright armor is applied with eager haste, that mortal parts in bronze may be encased. Sharp shafts in martial hands are grasped straight. Lines of hale soldiers boast a warlike gait. Chariots drawn by stately horses loom, ablaze in roseate dawn's effulgent bloom. The Trojans, by Penthesilea spurred, in inexpugnable courage were immured. Greater still was their pluck when they beheld that great Achilles' presence was withheld. For nowhere could that bastion be seen, who for the battle always was most keen. No parley nor negotiation passed between the armies who had now amassed, as they for bloody slaughter were voracious, no less were they for Nike's grace audacious. King Agamemnon, present in the lines, with his royal hand unto his herald signs. At once brash Stentor gives his deafening cry, "Ah!" And all the Danai their efforts ply into a charge of rage incontinent. The Dardan answer is as violent. And in the midst of old Scamander plain, translated now into a deathly fane, the rivals clash with a resounding shock, the sounds of which resemble stone on rock, only 100,000 times more dire. Unto the heavens did the brute aspire. Shields were transpierced and armor punctured, and groans arose from those who deathward sped. The queen, like Pallas in her bronze array, atop her chariot raced unto the fray, where with a mighty heft she cast her spear, and strake a hapless foe beneath the ear. Her soldiers wrought their bows to Danaan pain, showering them with arrows as with rain. Nor could those men endure the ghastly sight of raucous, raving women in the fight, and from the Amazons turned round and fled, incurring censures from stout Diomed. "Execrable cowards! Dost thou turn and fly? From feeble-limbed viragos dost thou shy? And here, see how they crumple to the ground when my great spear within their hearts is wound." Now launches Diomedes his attack, which strikes and palls his foe's wide eyes in black. Unto the earth that Amazon is cast, constrained by the power of the blast. The men, inspired by his example, turn and join the fray. All former dread they spurn. Though all the Achaean captains battled well, the lesser wights by the Amazones fell. Penthesilea the foremost in the slaughter, proving herself indeed of war a daughter. Foaming with rage, dread Hera cursed the day, and bad night start her course without delay. The sun retreats, dust settles on the field. The contest to impending dark must yield. The pained Hellenes to their camp retired, and all the dreadful Amazon admired for her stupendous feats of arms that day, as she inspired within the ranks dismay. A lion on a rampage was that queen, on luckless men expending all her spleen. King Agamemnon, hoping to forestall, recalling dour Achilles to the brawl, commanded that he be allowed to mourn until he was prepared his frame to adorn with the renowned plates of God's design, wrought with the ores from the imperial mine. Each day, the crashing melee was renewed. Each day, Penthesilea crazed Halud, as calling forth her hounds unto the hunt, hoping the elusive quarry to confront. None could repulse her, none her charge withstand. Ajax alone the queen could reprimand, whose giant stature and enormous brawn combined could stifle her immense elan. One time alone, to counter him she durst, and soon repented of her fortune cursed. When he rebuffed her and made a riposte, wherein she would have yielded up the ghost, had not she veered from Telamonian's thrust, made more tumultuous by battle lust. This did not serve her majesty to daunt. She merely found another plot to haunt, and preyed on others of a lesser bulk, averting still the Salamisian hulk. For days the Danaans were put to rout, being unable to occlude the spout from which the Dardan doughtiness derived. The Amazons, by which the Trojans thrived. Hera and Pallas in the heavens raged at how unjustly the affray was waged, and to Astrapios for vengeance sued, who therewith vowed to satisfy their mood. At once he summoned Iris to his side, and to appease his wish the goddess hied, to hear his will, which he imparted thus. Iris, dispatch and bring thou word from us, to rouse Achilles from his torpid duel, of his compatriots' rout, his honor school, omitting no description of their sorrow, that he shall raise his spear again tomorrow. The rainbow bowed her sylvan sparkling head, and from Olympus festinately sped, to execute great Zeus' immortal will, streaming down over land and tree and rill. In but a trice she makes her bright advent, near to the Pythian prince's ship's intent, and now as Automaton, charioteer of great Achilles' car and comrade dear, requests an audience with the mighty youth, aiming to press him to the fray for ruth. Renowned prince, thy friend admittance craves. Thus she. Achilles then his dictate waves, and lets the soldier in his tent to talk, from whom the fair Briseis does not balk. When fleet Achilles this newcomer viewed, his noble mind could not help but conclude that in his presence stood a wight divine, and thus he spoke with reverence condign. Thy features are too fair for mortal make, that thou art Iris, I my honor stake.
Shrewd Pylades, 'tis so. From Zeus come I, who bids thee offer Troy a stout reply to their rampaging Amazonian queen, who heaps upon thy countrymen great teen. Take up thy Pelian spear and godly shield, constrain the adversarial tribe to yield.
From the profoundest pocket of his soul, Achilles sighed, reflecting on his dole. Having relinquished life for deathless pomp, grim death awaited him upon the shop. Briseis, lachrymosal now, implored him with her eyes to avoid the stour abhorred. These pitiable Oiads could not avail, nor could they o'er the will divine prevail. Unto my Lord in heaven I defer, I will essay that monarch to deter. Her deputation done, the goddess flies. Achilles sees his mistress' gleaming eyes, and seeks to comfort her in his embrace. Dismayed, on's bosom couches she her face. How long is it until thou comest to me, upon a litter carried solemnly? Whispered the girl. And then what shall I do? And then how much thy absence shall I rue? Achilles knew that day would come indeed, and to this quandary he gave no reed, but only softly kissed her gentle brow, whilst uttering to himself a silent vow that he would come to her tomorrow night, and that he would not perish in the fight. The cynosure that the Hellenes boast, and terror to the assembled Dardan host. Achilles, armed upon his chariot, glows, as Eos stretches out her fingers' rows. The bristling plumes upon his helmet's crest bleed freely over blustery Zephyr's breast, as shadowy death upon his countenance perches, who all the while for his first victim searches. Through Ilium's soldiery now tremors thrill, as they behold this master of the kill. Paris recoils, Aeneas prays aloud, only the mighty Amazon stands proud. Achilles' beauty and his thewy frame ran so contrary to his fearful fame, that great Penthesilea was in wonder how one so fair could be so apt to plunder. Likewise, the prince perused her pristine charms, and was amazed such beauty took up arms. With direful clarion the alarm sound, whereat Achilles raced across the ground, whose coursers, both bred of immortal stock, cause all the lesser steeds therewith to balk. Nor Amazon nor Dardan faced the youth, fearing an execution too uncouth. Yet this did not forestall their bloody fate, as he with spears sought foes to extirpate. One caught his javelin beneath the arm. Another from his blade took mortal harm, as head from neck was rashly severed. His spear recovered, to the fray he sped, his ruby chariot thundering as he went. A surly Amazon from life he rent, smiting her brains out with his weighty shield, her viscid claret plashing red the field. His prey, like paltry ships upon the sea, who strive in vain the tempest's rage to flee, or like that jackdaw flying from the hawk, could find no haven from the deadly shock. Penthesilea cuts herself a path, voracious to expunge Achilles' wrath, whereon he sees his adversary fume, and smiles grimly at the chance of doom. Automaton his master's manner knows, and from a solemn nod begins to close. Likewise the Amazon her driver guides, who o'er the corpses of the fallen rides. As this redoubtable twain prepared to meet, the gathered armies stopped to adhere the feat, as though the gods themselves strove on the plain, who to exchange life-reaving blows were fain. First she her javelin pitches through the broil, expecting her fair quarry's looks to spoil. A ravenous hawk could not so swiftly speed as her sharp cornel, which careened with greed. But lo, that mordant prong so oft unerring was thwarted by his gibbous targe, scarce tearing the third bronze layer. Now his stout reply, which her broad buckler cannot stultify, but from her supple arm is wrenched away, transpierced by his javelin's assay. The queen now marvels at his martial might, whilst he propels another dart in flight. Screaming, the pointed tip cuts through the air, and would have rent her flesh all smooth and fair, but for the valor of her charioteer, who placed herself within the point's career. The savage blow her eyes enclosed in night, and in the earth both point and soldier pite. Penthesilea seized the vacant reins, and sought to vindicate her comrade's pains, by drawing out her ringing bronze-cast blade. Ha! Vengeance to visit as she hoarsely bade. Achilles from this conflict did not shy, but towards the queen he bade his driver fly. As two contestant rams in wrath will rush, so those two champions plied the brutal crush. Towards his chariot she tilts her course, meaning to capsize his war car perforce. He swings his weighty sword and she evades. Unto the solid earth the troop cascades, as battle car with battle car collides. Automaton rolls clear and battle chides, whilst queen and prince rejoin the seething fray, their scalpels flashing in warlike display. Soon a respite their skirmishes divided. Dread queen, thou art not with thy shield provided, began Achilles. Give o'er this dire strife, and though thou triumph'st not, thou keep'st thy life. His voice, majestic, deep like thunder, awed her virgin heart unsifted, kindling laud that blossomed into blazing love anon, which she to thwart pugnacity put on. Impudent Argive, stanch thy charity, and then repent of thy temerity. Had I but naked hands with which to rend, thou wouldst have need thy welfare to defend. Speak not to me of shields or armor's care, but rather for thy death do thou prepare. The youth, amazed at her illustrious tone, found that his heart to lover's thoughts had grown. Yet honor this soft sentiment expunged, and so into the fray once more he plunged. In fairness yet, his scutcheon he forgot, though without let or lenity he fought. Despite her great omnipotence, the queen could muster small defense unto his spleen. And fierce Achilles plunged his point in deep, dooming the maiden to immortal sleep. A marvelous gasp thrills through the viewing crowd. Some smile at fortune, others cry aloud. Penthesilea sees her claret stream. First down her lacteal thigh it runs agleam, then down the sword and down her butcher's arm, whose visage is distorted with alarm. Their eyes embrace, his gaping for his plight, hers soft and bleary for her dimming light. Her knees give way, she crumbles to the earth. The prince encloses her in his arm's girth. Her helm he doffs, from which a flaxen mane, like golden liquor, flows out on the plain. Her eyes, cerulean, search his souciant face. Her hand she lifts, his visage to embrace, tracing her fond caress with ruby ink. Achilles then from weeping could not shrink, but laved his lemon with his briny dew, which wrought like tears of woe from those in view. Her shade, agog on collied sticks to sail, craved yet one boon before her grim travail. A kiss to grace her lips, her death to seal. Her vow to abstain from love did she repeal, and raised her sweet aspect with trembling lips. His plushy mouth she traced with fingertips, which, scout-like, mapped the course of her emprise. A vigorous resolve illumed her eyes, for never kisses had her lips traversed. Her paling folds in his she then immersed, tasting of love, her first and final time, inwardly glad to know such sense sublime. Enwrapt, her last breath in him she consigns, the which to keep forever he designs, not daring to exhale the charmed perfume. Within his soul his love he would entomb. Alas, though Pelides surpassed the best, and was a son unto a mother blessed, the gods decree that man must take in breath, and thus the youth suspired his love to death. The conqueror, now conquered, sadly stoops, while over the deceased his plumage droops. In pity, Zeus dims day and his bright fires, whereon Achilles with the queen retires. No Trojan durst oppose the mourner's tread, they of his rage redoubtable adread. Penthesilea, betimes plucked from her stalk, arose by shears dissevered from her dock, passed to Elysium a valiant soul, who like so many fell nigh Troad's shoal. Hello, I'm Kyle, and thanks for joining me for the dramatic reading of my award-winning poem, Achilles and the Queen, formerly The Rose of Ilium. I was awarded first place in the annual war poetry competition through winning writers for this piece, so be sure to check them out if you're someone who loves to write or read poetry. If you enjoyed this, allow me to direct you to a few other projects I have on the go. The first being my audiobook version of Beowulf, to which all fees are waived and it's free to enjoy and share, so have at it. And the other project is my life's work, a novel-length epic poem called The Blessed. For the full cast, fully scored and sound-designed fantasy epic, head over to theblessedepic.com. The first 10 hours are free, and I guarantee you'll love it. If you liked the music in this, you can also check out the original music composed for The Blessed at theblessedepic.com. Or, if you're in the mood for something shorter and more frequent, I do readings of poetry every weekday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on TikTok at Bedtime with Kyle. And you can also find these readings on YouTube on my channel at The Kyle Derrick. Links are in the description below. Thank you, and take care now. The Blessed, an audiobook experience unlike any other.
Soulless as the Emperor is crowned.
Will be the Supreme Divine!
It is my duty to oppose this conquest, but I am too faint-hearted.
Virilus Magnus!
I am the rock against which the waves of malice break. Only you can defeat this foe, Virilus. How? You must free your heart. Unleash your power. I have no power. I am no god. Between a man and God, there are gradations.
What enchantment dost thou wield? There is something awesome.
How doth mortal man such strength invoke?
Because of battle lust, my sister Dua perished. It is the only way to save your friends. Unleash your power. Praise for the Blessed. It's something I didn't know I needed. I didn't want it to end. It sounds incredible, head and shoulders above anything else that's out there. I had to stop what I was doing, so engrossing. Epic. A full cast recording with original music. The Blessed. Unleash your power. Hi, I'm Kyle. Join me for this epic telling at theblessedepic.com. The Lionheart, an original opera. Music by Corey Arnold. Book by Kyle McDonald. That's me.
Tell me of your adventures, that my heart, by hearing of your bravery, may be stilled.
Hearken, maiden, and behold, I am part adventures bold. Hurrah! Hurrah! Hurrah!
You can find links to selections in the iTunes purchases at the bottom of the site. Conan and the Stone of Kellior by Kyle McDonald. That's me.
Conan, I, Conan, defy your rule. I, Conan, I, Conan.
You can find links to selections in the iTunes purchases at the bottom of the site. Actoripists.
Are you feeling down, anxious, depressed, like life has no meaning? Well, there's help. Meet James Hart in standard definition.
Actors, players, thespians, carnies. These are the lifeblood of our organization, and we at Alchemy Theater have the best.
He runs a psychodrama studio. And these are his actors.
In film, you can only play certain types of characters. You know, for me, it was usually the popular one, the bitchy one, the dirty slut.
So I guess that was my introduction into group. A little tense at first, but I think it went okay.
They made me apply to this foundation, so a large portion of my wage is subsidized by the government as long as I'm at risk.
I just moved here from up north. This is my first acting gig. It's not exactly what I had in mind.
And this is his method.
There. We've created a safe environment for our protagonist.
And they need money to make it into high definition.
This, my friend, is the storyboard for the soon-to-be award-winning web ad for Plenty of Lava Sex Fishes. You are the new face of P of LSF.
But James has a dark secret.
Are you gonna break up with him?
What's happening to me?
He needs help, and there's only one man who can do it. Scott Thompson is the guru of gurus.
Sensei.
You've come to the right place.
So get ready for a traumatic ordeal.
This isn't going to go well.
Focus!
You smell that?
James! Broom, broom.
Ow! I got caught!
A fly wouldn't eat your partially digested face!
God, you people make me sick!
Nobody even asked me if I was okay. Neglect is a form of abuse.
Because laughter is the best medicine.
So we're kind of like psycho actors or actor-rapists.
I think you just called us a bunch of rapists.
Actoripists.
Shh, shh, shh.
You can find links to the episodes at the bottom of the site. Trigger warning, this show is in the style of a 90s sitcom, and no sacred cow is safe.